Good evening, everyone, and happy spring. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Parent Voice on Vaping Community Conversation presented by Conemaugh Health System. My name is Tamara Raymer, and I am a Community Impact Director with the American Heart Association. Tonight, I will be moderating this discussion. As you may or may not know, vaping has become a huge public health issue among teens. These vaping devices can pose serious health risks to those who inhale them, or even can be toxic to young children who may accidentally consume the liquid or get the product onto their skin. There is no such thing as a risk-free tobacco product. To have true health, tobacco and nicotine-free is the way to be. Did you know that 1 in 4 high school-age kids report using e-cigarettes? Nearly 90% of smokers first tried tobacco products by the age of 18. Many adolescents falsely believe these new products are safe and don't realize they even contain nicotine. Vaping products can be more addictive than traditional cigarettes as they deliver much higher concentrations of nicotine in them. We will post a link in the chat if you would like to review our website and learn more about tobacco and vaping and find helpful resources. Tonight, you're going to be hearing from our 4 amazing panelists about why vaping is so harmful to our children. Our panelists are Dr. Dinesh Sharma, interventional cardiologist with Conemaugh Physicians Group, Kelly Zibura, school nurse with Westmont Hilltop Junior Senior High School, Lauren Graham Chappel, health promotion specialist with the American Lung Association, and Diana Mahalchik, Program Manager of Tobacco Prevention and Control with Adagio Health. Just so everyone knows, we are recording the session today. It will be available later on our American Heart Association Eastern States YouTube channel, and we will be sharing a link to that video on our social media. We are at AHA Pennsylvania on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Let's get social right now. We'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat box. Please add your name or your company and where you're joining us from today. Once you get familiar with the chat box, throughout these presentations, please place any questions or even comments that you have in the chat. We will ask your questions during a question and answer session with our speakers at the end of the presentation. Now, to get us started today, I'd first like to introduce Dr. Dinesh Sharma, who is an interventional cardiologist with Conemaugh Physicians Group. A native of Cleveland, Dr. Sharma graduated from Ohio State University and completed his medical education at A.T. Still University, Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri. He began his residency in orthopedic surgery at Sumo Western Reserve Hospital in Akron and completed his residency in internal medicine and fellowship in cardiovascular disease at Case Western Reserve Metro Health Medical Center in Cleveland, Ohio. Dr. Sharma continued his training as an interventional cardiology fellow at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan, and as a structural cardiology fellow at Buffalo General Medical Center in Buffalo, New York. Dr. Sharma has served as an academic teaching faculty at the University of Buffalo Jacobs School of Medicine and Biomedical Science. Dr. Sharma, I'm going to ask you to come on video at this time and unmute yourself. There we go. Well, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Sharma. We're very interested to learn about how e-cigarettes and vaping, and how dangerous they are for our youth. So my first question that I have for you is, what exactly are e-cigarettes and vapes, and how are they different from traditional cigarettes?
Thanks for the introduction. So starting off, I just wanted to talk about how they're basically battery-operated handheld devices that kind of mimic the experience of smoking a cigarette. They work by kind of heating the liquid, which may contain, and I think we'll get into this as well, just a combination of nicotine and different solvent carriers and a number of flavors and different chemicals to a high enough temperature to create like an aerosol and a vapor. Now there's more than 500 brands, and there's actually more than 7,800 flavors or so, unfortunately.
That's a lot. Yeah. And, who do we know that they're probably targeting other than our youth when there's that many flavor choices out there, right?
Exactly. I think the problem was that it originally was laid out as a platform to help people stop smoking. And that quickly turned into almost a substitute for smoking. And even worse, it turned into a popular thing for young adults to do that previously didn't even smoke. So I think that's where the problem was. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. No, I totally agree with that. Do you think that you could provide us with some information about the maybe misconceptions and myths about vaping products? What a lot of us have been hearing in the field is that many youth and teens And even adults think that vaping is less harmful than cigarettes.
Yeah, that's so. Again, when it first came out, they were trying to promote that that vaping is less harmful, which in fact it was probably 75% as harmful as smoking a cigarette, but it has falsely completely turned around in the sense that there, like you were touching upon, there's actually more nicotine in a lot of the e-vaping that happens, as well as being kind of mixed with and interspersed with other drugs per se. Now, ever since marijuana became legal in a lot of the states, it has been interlaced with vaping, and it doesn't have to be as regulated as cigarettes are, which is the scary part, because you can have fentanyl in it, which is a drug that we use commonly in the hospital for patients that are undergoing procedures for anesthesia, and for young kids to be taking that directly into their lungs is extremely toxic, as well as marijuana, as well as the nicotine in more than the levels that are contained in regular cigarettes. So given all three of those things, I think it's kind of turned the corner to the point where it's much more harmful depending on whatever you use.
Yeah, no, that is so true. So I know that vaping products are quite new, and I know it does take, quite a long time to come up with learning what is actually in these devices. But do you know what chemicals are known to be found in vaping products and why they are bad for our health?
Yeah, there's several, and the issue also is that they aren't regulated. So you could have a lot of different chemicals that aren't regulated by the government, and you could be inhaling these, and that even includes really toxic chemicals that are tiny particles that are inhaled into the lungs that can cause like an inflammatory response, as well as the solvents that we talked about before, like the glycerol and the propylene and the ethylene glycol. Those are all involved in just this inhalation, as well as heavy tins such as nickel, lead. All these things can be inside of these e-cigarettes, which just puts you at a very big risk of what it can actually do to your body, your lungs, your heart, and your vessels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what could you point out? You just mentioned, it affecting your heart, your lungs, blood vessels. Obviously, it can probably impact your blood pressure. What does it exactly do to those organs in our body?
Yeah. So for the blood vessels and the heart and the risk of stroke, it increases inflammation. That's something that was found to do almost immediately. There's been trials and studies that have shown, like on the molecular and cellular base level, it actually upregulates ACE2 receptors, and that's the same receptor that's actually upregulated and attacked by in COVID. So COVID attacks ACE2 receptors, and e-vaping actually causes you to create more of these ACE2 receptors. So really, you're just creating more targets for e-vaping to kind of go after. Not only that, but just like smoking, it decreases your ability to clear the mucosa in your lungs, which is always an issue. That's why you see a lot of people say, well, I was doing fine when I was smoking for 30 years, and as soon as I stopped smoking, I started feeling terrible. Well, in actuality, I think what that really means is that the mucosa couldn't clear all that junk that was in your lungs, and now that you're kind of waking it up, and all of a sudden you realize just how much is in there, and you're coughing it up every day. And for the first month or two, people say they feel horrible after smoking, and that's actually just your cells kind of waking up. Other things that it can do to your body, I'll touch upon these. It's actually a 56 more percent chance of having a heart attack. And these are randomized controlled trials between people that e-vape versus people that don't smoke at all. And that's a 30% more chance to have a stroke, a 10% more chance to have circulation problems, and probably a 44% more chance to have blood clots. So it also increases clots in your body. We all know that nicotine has its own effects. This is independent of e-vaping, but nicotine also can increase your heart rate as well as your blood pressure. And then there's always the e-volley, which is a kind of e-vaping associated lung injury. This has happened in 2018 where, well, actually in 2020, there was 3,000 patients that were admitted just in 2020 with what's called the e-vaping associated lung injury, where they were young, healthy individuals that were e-vaping and ended up coming to the hospital, having to be intubated, having a tube breathing for them. And the common denominator was e-vaping in them. These weren't people that were susceptible to it. And on the CT scans or or the CAT scans that take a really close look at those lungs, it showed basically inflammation that led to destruction of the alveoli, which are the little things in your lungs, those little balloons. Other things, multi-inflammatory syndrome in children. So it also affected children. A lot of children that, when I say children, I'm saying 13 and 12 year old kids that are doing this. What happened was it causes an acute respiratory distress syndrome in children that also need to be intubated. And this is the same common denominator as COVID. So there was children that were hospitalized for COVID that did e-vape, and then children that did not vape. And the children that were actually e-vaping had I think a 26 times fold increased chance of getting intubated again. So having a tube breathed for them. So definitely affects on all levels, on inflammation, on the lungs, on the heart, on the vessels, and increases blood clots all around.
Yeah, that's alarming. And I guess you kind of touched on this next question that I have for you about the consequences that we'd expect to see from prolonged e-cigarette use.
Yeah, sort of. I think it kind of ties in with the same things you would see with smoking. The long term. Now there aren't any long term studies with e-cigarettes, but it ties in with that it already leads to heart attacks in the short term. So I can only presume that it would do so in the long term as well. That along with addiction, because you don't know what else is in there. So addiction becomes a real thing, and especially when there's no regulation on what can be put into those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess it's, a vapor essentially going into the lungs, and it doesn't belong there. That's not what our lungs are meant to be. As we're not supposed to put that kind of stuff in our lungs. But yeah, and if you have anything else you want to share that maybe we didn't just touch on, you have another minute to do so. If there's anything else you'd like to talk about, Dr. Sharma.
I'm just really against it, only because I think it started off as like what people were trying to do was help, but then it quickly turned bad. And I think it takes a while for that to be put into the spotlight. But I'll let everybody else talk about the rest.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I remember when it came out too. I also was like, wow, this is a really cool thing. I guess maybe it will help people. And then you learn very quickly it's not so good. It was not a good alternative. It's as bad as any other kind of tobacco product. Oh my. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Sharma, for helping us better understand e-cigarettes and vaping. And for our attendees tonight, please make sure that you put your questions into the chat box for Dr. Sharma as we move on to our next guest. So our next guest then is Kelly. So she is our second panelist, Kelly Zibura. She's a school nurse at Westmont Hilltop Junior Senior High School, where she's been for the last 2 years. She received her RN from Mount Aloysius. I have such a trouble with pronouncing that word, and a BSN with certificate in school nursing from Slippery Rock University. She has a passion for public health nursing and has spent her time volunteering with the Johnstown Free Clinic. Kelly has been a nurse substitute at 8 different school districts, and she was a district RN at Blacklick Valley School District for 3 years. She loves seeing the families and students that she works with flourish. Her top priorities include mental and physical well-being. Kelly is the mother of 2 boys, and she always is trying to find new and creative ways to teach them self-care and wellness. Kelly, if you could join us now, come onto camera and off mute. Thank you. Hi, we're excited to hear from you tonight and to learn more about how parents and caregivers can better identify vaping products and how the epidemic is impacting schools. So thanks for coming. So Kelly, from your perspective, could you tell us what the biggest challenge is for addressing this issue in schools?
Sure. So I think there's several challenges, really. One is the population of students that we have. They're teens, so they think they're immortal and nothing's going to hurt them. So they're impressionable. So they see their peers doing these things and they pick it up and think it's great. They don't see the negative aspects of it. They see family members using them and think that, it's not going to do anything to them. What they're not seeing is that their brains aren't developed yet. So that nicotine or THC or hopefully not fentanyl, would be, having such an effect on their developing brain. The other challenge that we have is these kids have the ability to get these products online with ease. Like they don't need to put an ID in or anything like that. They just basically have to check a box that says they attest to being over 18, and they get it delivered right to their door or their friend's door. And another challenge is that the products are very easy to hide in plain sight. So they can use them indoors, outdoors, in the classroom, in the locker room, in the bathroom, in your house, and you don't really know because there's no aroma and barely any smoke. Whereas, a cigarette, you smell it, you see it, it's pretty evident. So it's challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a lot of those, as Dr. Sharma was pointing out, all the different flavors that are out there, those scents, then they're just a burst in the air really quick, and it just smells like somebody's chewing gum, a cotton candy something flavor, so I can so see why that poses such a challenge to schools in addressing it. Mm-hmm.
And some of them have no aroma at all.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I know that you have some samples to show us today on how deceptive these vaping devices can be. So we're going to pull up those pictures that you provided us with. If you could share some information about these with our attendees.
Yeah, so these actually I pulled off images from Amazon just to show you how easy they are to find and buy. They range anywhere from $10 to $20. You can put them in the hairbrush, in the water canteen, they can hide them. I think the scariest ones for me are the inhaler, because you're thinking someone's using medication and they're actually using a vape, and the sweatshirt strings, because they're actually able to take a puff off of that in the middle of class or wherever they are, and you're thinking they're just chewing on their strings like some kids do. But yeah, my eyes were open whenever I went to a training and were shown some of these products. I never looked at a teenager's hairbrush the same ever again. Like, I was like, what are you hiding in there?
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. Yeah, and I mean, I have a young child, but I still just like seeing these kind of things. My mind is blown to know that someday he could be bringing these items home. That's wow.
They have so much easier access to these things nowadays because they can just log on and buy them and nobody knows about it,
Mm-hmm.
And I do have some regular vapes too that we had. You can see how pretty they are. Try to show you guys and why they're so like appealing to the teen population. They're actually kind of cute in a way, I guess. So there's all these ones. The Fuse one is the most popular one right now. We see a lot of these. It's very slim, can fit up a sleeve in a classroom and poke it out and use it. This is the cartridge that goes in it. One of these actually has enough nicotine in it for a whole pack of cigarettes, and our kids are using multiple cartridges a day.
Oh, that's awful. Wow.
So that's just some examples. A lot of these are throwaways. Some of these are like a little bit bigger and obnoxious, but they're usually pretty small and inconspicuous.
Wow, thank you for sharing those. Seriously, so eye-opening. Do you have, after seeing all this, do you have any advice on how parents and caregivers could approach this topic with their kids? I know sometimes it's very hard for anybody to, have a conversation about this. It's a sensitive topic. So if you have any advice about how parents could talk to their kids about that, that would be great.
Sure. The first thing I would say is definitely educate yourself on vapes, because it's very easy for kids to try to pull one over on you and tell you, what they've heard from their friends, what they've heard online, what they've heard off of TikToks. So if you're educated and open up the conversation non-judgmentally, and just try to be just more understanding and interview them instead of lecturing them. So just trying to get a hold of what they know about vaping and see what their perception is about it, whether it be positive or negative, and then kind of go from there about how to address it. So if they kind of feel that vaping is in a positive light, and then maybe interview them more and see if they're already using, And if they are, offer them, resources. There are things out there that's going to help them beat that addiction. Zyban, Wellbutrin, medications, nicotine replacement therapy, where they're not going to feel they're alone with having to quit, So knowing that you have that in your back pocket, ways to recognize use at home too, smelling that aroma like you were talking about, mood changes in your ability because they're not able to get that nicotine all the time whenever they're at home. So you might notice that. A desire to flavor their food. So if you're noticing they're eating a lot of more salty foods or putting salt on their food, their taste buds actually deaden from the nicotine. So that could be, why they're using that. Or if you're noticing that they're being diagnosed with pneumonia or nosebleeds frequently, that could be another, red flag to you that, they might be vaping and not actually telling you. Another way is to ask your healthcare provider to talk to your child when you go in for regular checkups, just to remind them, of the dangers of vaping and to watch and not follow, peer lead. And something I like to use is YouTube videos because there is so many available with kids their age that actually have had really bad effects, even lung transplants from having bad reactions to vapes. And I think that's a pretty effective way of getting to them and letting them see like this is what could happen.
Very good advice. Thank you so much for that. What you've been at a couple of schools, and so you've probably seen a lot over the years. What are school districts doing to address the student vaping epidemic?
So some schools are using a really great way of dealing with it. So they offer the kids either you pay a fine or you go to a Saturday course and get educated on why nicotine is bad for you. And I really like that because a lot of parents are like, hey, you got caught, you need to pay the fine. Kids don't have the money to pay the fine, so they have to go to these seminars. One company rather that was putting it on, association, was Breathe PA. They used to host our kids, and if they weren't able to pay the fine, they go to Breathe PA for the day and learn why nicotine and vaping and cigarettes are harmful. So it was that education and prevention part that I think that really helps. It also deterred them from taking it back into school because they'd end up back on a Saturday being at an education seminar instead of doing what they wanted to do as a teen. We also have a student assistance program. Every school does. So if a kid gets caught with anything like tobacco, drugs, or alcohol, they see a liaison and they get them set up with the help that they need, even therapy if they need to. And then there's different online programs too. In Depth is an American Lung Association program, and it's kind of the same thing. They have modules that the kids would have to go through and answer questions, and any school can sign up for that and have the kids do that. And they also have some apps like Smoke Free Teen and My Life, My Quit, which actually sends them text messages and reminders about why smoking is bad for them and why they should stay abstinent from it.
Great, thank you. All right. So thank you, Kelly, for your insights on vaping in school and also for sharing those awesome images with us. And we definitely learned a ton of great information from you. And another reminder to our audience, please add your questions in the chat box for Kelly or also Dr. Sharma if you've thought of any questions. And it's my pleasure to introduce our third panelist this evening, Lauren Graham-Chappel. Lauren is a health promotion specialist with the American Lung Association. Her primary role is centered on managing Pennsylvania's youth tobacco prevention program known as the Tobacco Resistance Unit, or TRU. She oversees TRU recruitment, member engagement, and TRU advisor and member trainings. In addition, Lauren organizes TRU Storms, manages the TRU website and social media, and serves as the youth advocacy lead for the Pennsylvania Alliance Control Tobacco, or PAC. Lauren, I'm going to ask you to come on screen now. Hi. All right. So Lauren, we discussed the challenges to addressing teen vaping within the schools, but what do you feel are some of the biggest challenges for addressing this issue throughout the community?
Yeah, so I think there are three main challenges that kind of build on what Kelly was talking about. And some of these have already been touched on. The first challenge being just a lack of awareness of the health impact of vaping, especially on our youth and young adults. That misconception that e-cigarettes are a healthier alternative to cigarettes, or that they just contain water vapor and fruit flavoring, when in reality they contain chemicals that can really cause harm when they're inhaled. So, Dr. Sharma already touched on a number of those chemicals. Some others include formaldehyde, which can cause lung disease and heart disease, acrolein, which is used to kill weeds. So there's just some really nasty stuff in these products, and we need to spread the word about the health risks that they cause, including the lasting effects that they can have. The second challenge being flavored tobacco products. So these play a major role in getting and keeping our youth addicted to vaping. And we know that 80% of youth who ever started tobacco began with a flavored product. And the fact that kids are attracted to flavors is something that the tobacco industry has known and exploited for a long time. For decades, tobacco companies have been making different kinds of flavored tobacco products with the intention of attracting kids and getting them hooked on nicotine so that they can secure, the next generation of big tobacco customers. And we also know that kids will follow the flavors. So when Juul, for instance, all the youth were using Juul to start, Juul stopped selling flavored e-cigarettes, and then all of the youth very quickly switched to other brands like Puff Bar that offered the kid-friendly flavors they were used to. So that's a reason why the Lung Association continues to call on FDA to prohibit all flavored tobacco products, because it's a major factor in youth initiation. And then the third challenge is really the tobacco industry's just constant drive to innovate in order to stay one step ahead of the regulations. So not only are tobacco companies targeting youth with kid-friendly flavors, they're also trying to stay one step ahead of FDA at all times. In one of the more recent examples, FDA sent a warning letter to Puff Bar because their ads were clearly marketing towards youth, which is something that's not allowed. And instead of addressing the issue with FDA, Puff Bar started using synthetic nicotine in their products, which is nicotine that's made in a lab instead of from a tobacco plant. And at the time, FDA did not have the authority to regulate synthetic nicotine. So they were able to just ignore the current tobacco regulations and kind of do what they wanted because it was a synthetic nicotine product. So fortunately, President Biden recently signed a bill giving FDA authority to regulate synthetic nicotine. But that just means that tobacco companies will be looking for a new loophole to exploit. So yeah, those are kind of the three hurdles I see. Big challenges, but definitely something that we can overcome.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, we almost got there once. I feel like we were so close with cigarettes and then cigarettes came out. So we can do it again. Absolutely can.
Yeah, exactly.
So what existing resources are available from your organization specifically that can help with this epidemic?
Yeah, so like Kelly said, the first thing I would encourage everyone to do is to get information on how to talk to your kids about these products. So the Lung Association has a website, thevapetalk.org. So it's a great resource for any parent, whether or not you think your child is currently vaping or may at some point vape, or you think they're totally not interested in it. It provides information on why a kid might vape, as well as the dangers of using these products and some signs and symptoms of e-cigarette use. And it also gives a step-by-step guide on how to talk to your kids. So it's a really great starting point. And then the Lung Association also offers several school-based programs, as Kelly hinted at. So, and we focus these on educational opportunities for the youth, because we know that punitive policies aren't effective with respect to tobacco use, specifically in youth. So we encourage all schools to offer on-site programs to help students quit and help educate them about the dangers of tobacco products, or to connect them with outside resources that can do that. So from the Lung Association, we have the Not on Tobacco program, which is a voluntary in-person quit smoking or quit tobacco product program. And it's intended for youth ages 14 to 19. And this can be offered in a school or in a community setting. But it's backed by 20 years of really impressive results. So about 90% of youth who go through the program report quitting or cutting back on their tobacco use. And we also have an online version of the program. So if there isn't a NOT program near you currently, you can visit notforme.org and enroll your student in your child in a online cessation program. And we also offer the in-depth program, as Kelly mentioned. This is an alternative option for students who face suspension for violating the school's tobacco use policy. So again, we don't want to punish the students for using tobacco products. We'd rather inform them about why these products are dangerous and kind of encourage them to go into a NOT type cessation program. And then both of those programs, both NOT and in-depth, make up the heart of our Vape-Free Schools initiative. And this initiative aims to help schools offer students the education and the resources that they need to stop using tobacco products and to stay tobacco-free. So to learn more about all of these programs, you can visit lung.org. And we would encourage everyone on this call to work with your school administrators to implement some of these programs. And then last, I'll just touch on the Tobacco Resistance Unit TRUE, which is the program, the statewide program that I manage. So this is a program for youth ages 12 to 18. And our TRUE members engage in a variety of education and advocacy activities and community outreach activities that are aimed at preventing and stopping youth tobacco use. So we have, all of our Pennsylvania youth ages 12 to 18 are invited to become TRUE members. So you can visit trueinpa.org to learn more about that and find a group near you.
Awesome, thank you. What do you see as the greatest opportunity for tackling this issue?
So I think number one, removing all flavored tobacco products from the market. I think that would have a significant impact on youth vaping and just youth tobacco use overall. So from an advocacy perspective, I think that's what we need to focus on. But I think peer-to-peer education is also a really important aspect for us to focus on. So, peer-to-peer education through programs like TRUE, because a lot of times information from adults can kind of go through one ear and out the other when it comes to youth, but a peer educator can serve as a more approachable resource of information, and they can also kind of help to establish a social norm when it comes to nicotine-free lifestyles. And then also, there's the youth advocacy component, because legislators, they want to hear from the people that are most impacted by the issue. And so in this case, that would be our youth. So youth advocates can be really powerful when it comes to working with legislators and getting things like flavored tobacco products off the market.
So that's a really good way to pull our youth into, the whole movement of let's stop doing e-cigarettes and vaping in this generation. And so did you want to tell us a little bit more about the TRUE program? We got like another minute.
Yeah. One of the great ways for our TRUE members to get involved in the advocacy work is Day at the Capitol, which is actually taking place next month. So it's our biggest advocacy event of the year, and the TRUE members actually get to engage one-on-one with the legislators. So it's a really great opportunity for them to have a hand in in affecting the tobacco control, landscape. So it's something that they look forward to every year. We're always really excited to get them involved. It's been virtual the past few years, but we are excited to get them back to Harrisburg next year and meeting in person with the legislators. So yeah, hopefully we'll see many of your kids there as well next year.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for your expertise about vaping. And please feel free to our audience to add your questions into the chat again for Lauren or for any of the other panelists right now. At this time, I'm going to introduce our final panelist this evening, and that is Diana Mahalchik. She is the program manager at Southwest Health District for Tobacco-Free Adagio Health. Diana joined the organization in 2019 with a background in mental and behavioral health. Diana has spent the last 9 years working in the prevention field. She is a certified tobacco treatment specialist and cessation counselor working to prevent and eliminate tobacco use and exposure to all Pennsylvania residents. As a mother, Diana is a strong advocate for youth education and tobacco-free initiatives. So Diana, I'm going to ask you to come on now. There you are. Hi. All right. So Diana, could you tell us what nicotine and vaping resources you have available within your organization?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. Adagio Health is the regional primary contractor for tobacco prevention and control for Southwest and Allegheny County. We provide a wide array of services to youth and adults. All services are free of charge, and we approach the issues from all angles. So we have cessation treatment, we have free nicotine replacement therapy, policy work, prevention education, and advocacy work. Adagio Health provides in-person or virtual cessation programs that include not an in-depth that Lauren spoke about. We provide youth education programming for K through 12 with age-appropriate presentations. We also provide school administration and parents presentations to educate them on the dangers of vaping, as well as nicotine use, what to look for, popular trends and devices. We work closely with Lauren at the American Lung Association to start true groups throughout the region, plan events surrounding tobacco holidays, and encourage our youth to be strong advocates for nicotine-free lifestyles. Actually, this Thursday is our very first Youth Leadership True Conference that we are going to bring together our advocates throughout the region. We will be advocating for MSA funding, which is always something that we advocate for because it funds our programs, as well as closing the loopholes in the Clean Indoor Air Act, which, just a side note, Pennsylvania still has over 2,000 sites that are still allowing smoking indoors. So we're going to have students give them the opportunity to meet with legislators throughout the region and practice for their advocacy day for Day at the Capitol on May 3rd. So we are super excited about that.
Oh goodness, sorry, I'm like lost my place here. So what problems related to nicotine and vaping use among youth and teens are of the highest concern in our community?
There are several. So the adolescent brain isn't fully developed till the age of 25, as Kelly mentioned. So introducing a drug like nicotine to the underdeveloped brain can cause irreversible damage, some long-lasting cognitive effects on brain development, such as difficulty concentrating, difficulties learning, difficulties with impulse control, attention and memory deficits. It can also cause behavioral health issues, more specifically mood disorders. It essentially rewires the brain. Another topic for concern is the handling of devices. So as Dr. Sharma mentioned, some of these devices can be laced with THC and fentanyl. So if you do find one, I would recommend protecting your skin and reaching out to someone like myself for proper disposal. Another area for concern is the nicotine levels, as we mentioned. So the nicotine levels in vaping devices are much higher than combustible cigarettes. So cigarettes generally have 8 to 20 milligrams of nicotine, but the body only absorbs about 1 to 2 milligrams. So when you think about how someone smokes a cigarette, it's lit the entire time. So most of the cigarette is burning away. Now take an e-cigarette, like a Juul, for instance. One Juul pod has 59 milligrams of nicotine. And as Kelly mentioned, that is equivalent to an entire pack of cigarettes. Well, your body is absorbing all of that nicotine. Nothing is wasted with e-cigarettes. That's why we're seeing such high usage and strong addictions among youth. E-cigarette users are the guinea pigs. As Dr. Sharma mentioned, there are no long-term effect studies, so only time will tell what that really is going to affect the body long-term.
Very good. That's very interesting. I had no idea about that. Wow. Where do we have the opportunity to move the needle the most on this problem in the community?
Well, let's keep in mind that prevention is cheaper than treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So Adagio Health has trained the trainers in programs like Catch My Breath. Catch My Breath is a peer-reviewed, evidence-based youth vaping prevention program developed by the University of Texas. It is a 4-session program for grades 5th through 12th. The program provides up-to-date information to teachers, parents, health professionals to equip students with the knowledge and skills they need to make informed decisions about the use of e-cigarettes. 7 out of 10 students said they are less likely to use e-cigarettes after going through Catch My Breath. So we would love to have a teacher trained in every school district to facilitate Catch My Breath. We'd also like to increase true enrollment for the tobacco resistance unit. This program provides students with the opportunity to learn about advocacy work and leadership skills, like Lauren mentioned, and it helps empower students to make smart choices and set an example for their friends. So vaping education presentations from my staff are definitely impactful, but like Lauren said, hearing it from a friend makes a huge difference. Another avenue is school policy updates. So I know Kelly mentioned Smokeless Saturdays, which is through Breathe PA. Well, it's one thing for a student to attend those programs and, you know, make the change, not use vaping devices or bring them to school anymore. But what we've noticed throughout the region is that the same students are being referred multiple times to Smokeless Saturdays. So empowering the policy with not an in-depth program interventions is definitely something that is going to help move that needle and help support students in a quit journey.
Very good. So speaking of the community in general, what gaps are there in resources, you know, within the community?
So I would say that COVID has definitely presented some barriers to program awareness amongst schools. So at the beginning of the school year, there were questions about how schools were going to operate. Would it be virtual, in person, or a hybrid mix? My organization sent out New Year's packets to every school district in Southwest and Allegheny County with all of our information, all of the programs offered, and the fun activities that we do with True. Unfortunately, we only heard back from a few schools. So community engagement and school participation are definitely high on that list.
Yes, I agree with you there. And, you know, COVID definitely posed a lot of challenges during all of that for community and for schools.
Certainly.
Absolutely. So we saw some pictures earlier of the various vaping devices, and I know you have these wonderful pictures here to share to really point out how, you know, our youth are actually concealing these products. So can you tell us more about this?
Yes, so I can say that the trend of the flavored disposable e-cigarettes continues to increase, as everyone touched upon. The National Youth Tobacco Survey rated the Puff Bar as #1 in 2021, but we have been seeing the Enjoys, the High, the Views in it differs from different school districts. And as Kelly mentioned, anyone can purchase these products online. And unfortunately, Juul is the only company that will require you to show some kind of verification as far as your identification and proving that you're 21. So like Kelly mentioned, these products are very easy to conceal. We have smartwatches, which my 10-year-old son actually has a smartwatch that looks identical to the one on your screen right now. And the one on your screen actually does tell the time. So it's very deceiving. The inhaler, the Puffit is what it's called. We confiscated one of those from a student that was attending a football game. And the only reason that we knew it was not an inhaler was when he took a puff, you could see a light on the front of it in the stands. So that's what drew attention to it. As well as, you know, these clothing lines that are coming out. There's a company called Vapewear. where you can purchase hoodies and backpacks that have these strings attached where you can just go ahead and take a puff from them. The phone devices, it just fits on the back of your phone. No one would ever know. The USB looking device, that's very deceiving. And as Kelly mentioned, that is very easy to conceal. I've also heard of people purchasing scrunchies that have a little zipper part on them to conceal the device. So yep, there you go. So I would definitely pay attention to your teens. If they're walking around with scrunchies, just go ahead and grab their wrist, hold their hand, make sure there's nothing in there. The Sharpie, again, this was something that someone, engineered themselves. Kelly actually had one that was shaped like a Sharpie and was designed that way. We've had students conceal devices in straws. So they're very, very sleek. Again, like Kelly said, very easy to conceal. So putting the device in the straw just makes it look like they're taking a sip of their drink. We have students that have hidden devices in the bathroom inside the toilet paper roll. And what they'll do is once they hide it, they'll text their friends where it's located. So all day long, multiple people will be using the same device, which again, in this COVID era, presents other issues, communicable diseases. And then I've also heard of students concealing them in beanies. So the part that folds up, just stuffing it in there, cutting parts of your shoes out so that you can fit a device in there as well. It's very alarming.
Yeah, it's very alarming indeed, and overwhelming just to see all these different ways that kids are concealing these products. Very crazy. All right. Well, thank you for sharing, all these wonderful resources with us, and, having everybody understand what education is available in the community. I guess too, something I do want to ask you is where are these kids getting these? You mentioned, that they can get these on Amazon, but where else do they get them from?
They certainly don't have any issue purchasing them online. They're also getting them from older siblings. They're maybe taking them from their parents or, different adults that are in their life. And unfortunately, because when vaping devices hit the market, they were introduced as a, less harmful option than cigarettes. So I think people still have that perception. So some parents and older adults maybe don't think it's that big of a deal and don't really understand the full risks of it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you again for sharing this information about the teen vaping epidemic. And this is your final time for our attendees to be posting your questions in the chat. We will be we'll be doing a question and answer here in a few with our panelists. I just want to say thank you to all the panelists for sharing all the many resources and education available in the community. And, just wanted to point out that the American Heart Association is also working with schools on education about e-cigarettes and vaping, especially within the elementary schools through our Kids Heart Challenge. And we are working with school districts to actually do tobacco and vaping policies, trying to get them to change their code of conduct and the policy to include vaping in their verbiage, because we too believe in prevention and education, at a young age and, if in the teen years as well. Now I want to ask all of our panelists to come back on the screen, and we're going to start some questions from the audience. All right. So one question that I have, and you guys can all kind of take a stab at it however you want to do it, unless that it's specifically addressed to you. What solutions do you think will have the greatest impact on addressing teen vaping?
I guess I can kick that off. So I would say probably three things will have a huge impact. As I mentioned earlier, removing all of the flavored tobacco products from the market. That's what's attracting kids. That's what's keeping them hooked. So legislation that's going to remove all of those products is key. Also, spreading awareness about the dangers of these products, specifically, the impact they have on youth and the developing brain. And then also, continuing to advocate for for funding for tobacco prevention programs. So without funding, we don't have not an in-depth and other cessation programs. So making sure that we have funding from the state is also really key.
I would definitely echo Lauren as far as awareness. We have to start with our youth and making sure that they're educated on the facts. Youth are big tobacco's main target. They want a user for life. So we need to make sure that they understand the risks. We need to make sure they understand the myths about big tobacco and how they target youth so that they can educate other youth.
I agree. And I think more funding in schools, because I don't think there's any other platform better equipped to handle it for the kids, because we have them 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 9 months out of the year. So if we have something in our school, even on the opening remarks of school every day for 180 days, a fact about vaping, would that make a difference, for the kids hearing that every day for 180 days? I think it's, worth a try, something like that.
I was a big fan of the catch my breath. I think Diana had mentioned that. I think prevention goes a long way.
Absolutely. Awesome. I love that you all chimed in on that. That was great. So we have had, here's something from the chat. We have had parents say it's daunting to know what to look for, especially as things constantly change. How would you suggest parents stay on top of the newest sneaky ways kids are getting vaping tools, and are there resources available?
There are absolutely resources available. Catch My Breath is something that is put there for parents as well. And the best part about that program is that it's constantly changing to update with the latest trends and things that are going on in communities. I also think, having a resource and being connected with the regional primary contractor to put on, parent presentations, school presentations to educate administration as well as parents. And we've done a few of those recently, and it's been difficult to get the attendance from parents because it's in the evening, they work all day. But just the fact of getting them engaged and showing up, I think, is very important.
All right. And Kelly, this is for you. Are there any gaps in resource needs for schools to be able to address the issue among their students?
Like I said earlier, I just think more funding for prevention programs, absolutely. And to have resource officers and things, resource officers, because school police officers offer a lot of education on these issues too, and I think they're super important. And parental involvement, being able to have that support at home too, that it's not just us telling the kids like this isn't good for you and educating them, but having that at home being brought up in conversations too, I think would be huge.
Okay, so I'm going to ask each of you now if there's one takeaway that you want everybody to know today that's listening in or that's going to be viewing this, this recording. What do you want them to know to get ahead of this with their own children?
I would say involvement. Take an interest, especially as your child gets older and hits those teenage years. I mean, I've heard of Smokeless Saturday referrals as young as 5th grade. I mean, that's 10, 11 years old. Be involved. Make sure that you are checking your kids' rooms for things. If you smell something, if you see something that you didn't purchase, taking things apart. I had a question from a parent recently. Well, how do we know? How do we know? And I'm like, well, just investigate, start disassembling whatever it is. And if you see, different cartridges or battery packs, then this isn't normal. But also to be aware of, as we mentioned, these things can be laced with different other chemicals, drugs that are very serious. So to be very careful in your handling of them.
And I'd say if you're listening to this presentation and you hear about all these programs, but think, they're not offered in my child's school, definitely feel empowered to talk to the school administrators about these programs and, be the advocate at your school to get them implemented. If you're not sure how to do that, you can reach out to me and I can put you in touch with someone. You can reach out to Diana. I know she would be happy to help. But yeah, if you're feeling frustrated because, these programs aren't available to your student, we can definitely change that.
I think I was a bit shocked to see the different avenues that kids could kind of, I don't even know how it would be really tough to just go through all that stuff, but I do think you should try to. I think open conversation would be a huge step as well, just at the dinner table or anything, just bring it up, even if you suspect it or don't suspect it or just want to know more about it, because it seems like kids these days might know more about it than we do as far as the avenues.
And did we get everybody? Kelly, did you do a closing takeaway for us?
I didn't, but I agree with everybody. Definitely open communication and, watching for those red flags that, might pop up that may make you think that your child is vaping.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we hope that everybody enjoyed the conversation tonight. And if you're interested in more resources about tobacco and vaping from the American Heart Association, you can find them at our website, heart.org. We're also going to be sharing some resources and programs from all of our panelists after the event. So you will all have access to that. And that'll be going to your emails that you registered with. Thank you again to all of our wonderful panelists this evening. Thank you to Conemaugh Health System for their support for tonight's conversation. And thank you again to everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.